I still remember the way the airport lights buzzed. Low, steady, like they were mocking the silence in my chest. People hurried around me. Luggage wheels clattering on tile. Voices echoing from every direction. And me. I was standing there alone, clutching a crumpled boarding pass that no longer meant a thing. "Marilyn, you'll figure it out," Tanya had said, her voice sweet, careless. My daughter-in-law, with her perfect hair and colder smile, rolling her shiny suitcase into the first-class line. "We only bought you a one-way ticket. You've got your phone. You'll be fine." She didn't even look back. Not once. And my son, my only son David, just stood beside her silent, pretending to scroll through his phone like he wasn't part of this. They both disappeared through the gate as if I had never existed. First I thought it was some kind of joke. Waited. I told myself they'd come back. But the minutes turned to hours, and the truth settled heavy. They were gone. Around me life kept moving. Families hugging. Kids whining. Couples laughing. I just buried my husband 6 weeks earlier. 40 years of marriage gone overnight, and this was supposed to be a healing trip. They said the beach would help. That I needed fresh air. That family time would be good for me. I sold my husband's old watch to help pay for those tickets. They said everyone was pitching in. But when I tried to check in, the agent smiled politely and told me, "Ma'am, this ticket's one way." Wait. My knees nearly gave out. I laughed, because what else could I do? There had to be a mistake. But the agent's face said otherwise. I turned to find them, but all I could see was the security line and the flash of Tanya's designer bag vanishing behind the scanner. I tried calling out, but my voice cracked. And then I realized they'd planned this. I sat on the bench near gate 14, clutching my purse like it could hold my dignity together. People stared. Some looked away. A few offered those small, pitying smiles that hurt worse than anything. I didn't cry. Not there. Not yet. Inside my bag, next to a half-empty pack of tissues, was an envelope, one my husband had given me years ago. He used to call it our rainy day plan. And God, if it wasn't pouring now. That night, as the loudspeaker announced final boarding, I knew 2 things for sure. 1, my family had left me behind. And 2, they had no idea what kind of woman they'd just abandoned. I don't remember how long I sat there. Time blurred in that airport. The announcements, the footsteps, the distant laughter. It all felt like background noise to something that had already ended. I kept staring at the gate they walked through, half expecting my son to come running back, apologizing. He didn't. At some point, a janitor passed by and asked gently if I was all right. I smiled the way women do when they're trying not to fall apart. "Just waiting," I said. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I was realizing. When the crowd thinned and the last flight took off, I finally stood up. My body ached. Not from the sitting but from holding everything in. The anger. The disbelief. The shame. I walked to the big glass windows and looked out at the planes taking off. Their lights flickered across the night sky like freedom itself. And I wondered if any of them were heading where my son was going. I wondered if he looked out his window and thought about me. Somehow I knew the answer. I made my way out of the terminal, holding on to the last bit of dignity I had left. Outside the air was cold. The kind of cold that doesn't care how old you are, or how long you've loved people who stopped loving you back. I stood by the curb, clutching my purse like it held my whole life. And in a way it did. My ID. My phone. My last $50. And that envelope. Jake's handwriting was still on it. "For you if things ever get hard." He wrote that a few months before he passed. He always worried about me more than himself. He was that kind of man. Soft in the ways that mattered, strong when life demanded it. I didn't open it right there, not yet. Instead, I found a quiet bench under one of those flickering yellow lights outside the terminal. And I sat. I tried to make sense of it. Of why my own son, the boy I had raised, the boy I had held when he was sick, defended when the world was cruel, could do this. I searched my memory for any clue, any warning sign I'd missed. And all I could find were the small moments. Tanya's clipped tone, the way David's calls had grown shorter, the subtle distance that started long before the airport. had been coming slowly, quietly. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through our messages. There were no missed calls. No text. The silence was its own message. So I sat there for hours, letting the reality settle. Then, as the sky began to lighten and the first cab pulled up near the sidewalk, I opened Jake's envelope. Inside was a folded note and a few crisp bills. Not much, but enough. The note said only this: "If you ever feel like you've got nowhere left to go, find someone who remembers who you are." And I knew exactly what he meant. He was talking about Sam, his old friend, a lawyer. A man who had helped us once, long ago, when life wasn't kind. That's when I knew what I had to do. I wiped my eyes, stood up, and hailed that cab. "Downtown," I said. "Rivera and Cole Law Office." The driver nodded and pulled away from the curb. I looked out at the city lights fading behind me, and for the first time since they left me, I didn't feel small. I felt something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. The cab smelled faintly of old coffee and pine air freshener. I sat in the back, my hands resting on my purse, watching the city roll by through streaked windows. The world outside looked exactly the same. Cars, lights, movement, but something in me had shifted. I wasn't the woman who came to the airport with hope in her suitcase. That woman had been left behind at gate 14. When the driver pulled up to the old brick building on Jefferson Street, I almost didn't recognize it. Rivera and Cole Law Offices looked smaller than I remembered. Quieter too. But then again, everything feels smaller once you stop being afraid of it. I stepped inside, and the familiar scent of paper and lemon polish hit me. The receptionist looked up, a bit startled by the sight of a woman carrying her whole life in one worn purse. "Can I help you?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said. "I need to see Sam Rivera. Tell him it's Marilyn Hale." She nodded and disappeared down the hallway. Moments later Sam appeared. Older now, his hair mostly silver, but his eyes still sharp and kind. "Marilyn," he said, almost disbelieving. "Well, I'll be damned. I haven't seen you since Jake passed. I finished for him." He hesitated, then gave me a small, genuine smile. "I'm sorry. He was a good man." "He was," I said, my voice steady. "That's why I'm here." He gestured to his office and I followed him inside. It was warm, cluttered, alive with the kind of chaos that only belongs to people who care about their work. I sat down across from him, my hands folded tight. "I need to make changes," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Changes? To my will?" That got his attention. He leaned forward, his expression softening but serious. "Marilyn, are you sure you want to do this now? You just—" "I'm sure," I interrupted. "More sure than I've been about anything in years." He didn't ask right away. Sam had the good sense to give silence its space. Then quietly, "You want to talk about what happened?" Took a breath. "My son and his wife left me at the airport. On purpose." He blinked, processing. "Good Lord." I gave a dry, humorless laugh. "It's fine. It just made things clearer." He didn't argue. He just opened a folder and clicked his pen. "All right then. Tell me what you want." "I want to remove them both from my estate," I said. "Every account, every property. They get nothing." He nodded slowly. "And you'd like to designate someone else?" "Yes. Place called Haven Reach. They help older people who've been abandoned or taken advantage of. I read about them a while back." Sam's pen scratched across the paper. "That's poetic justice, Marilyn." "It's not justice," I said. "It's peace." We worked for hours, line by line, name by name, undoing decades of assumptions. By the time we finished, I felt lighter. Not happy, not yet, but lighter. Like taking off a coat I didn't realize I'd been wearing in July. When I finally stood to leave, Sam looked at me the way Jake used to, like he saw something in me I couldn't yet see myself. "You're stronger than you think," he said. "I used to be," I replied. "Maybe I will be again." Outside, the sun was beginning to set, washing the street in gold. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like running. I felt like resting, not because I was tired but because I had somewhere new to stand. That night, in a quiet motel room off the highway, I spread the signed documents out on the bed. My husband's handwriting, Sam's notes, my initials, a small paper trail of survival. And as I looked at them, I realized something. Being left behind isn't the same as being lost. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the kind that feels empty, the kind that feels earned. The cab turned off the highway and onto a long tree-lined road that curved toward a sign I could barely make out in the morning haze. Willow Grove. Independent living with dignity. I didn't know what dignity looked like anymore, but I was about to find out. The place wasn't fancy. No marble floors or shining chandeliers. Just sunlight spilling through wide windows and the smell of lemon polish mixed with fresh coffee. Felt honest. Like the kind of place where people actually listen when you talk. A woman at the front desk looked up and smiled. "You must be Mrs. Hale. Welcome to Willow Grove. We've been expecting you." Expecting me. No one had said that to me in months. She showed me around. A courtyard with benches, a small library, a dining room filled with laughter I hadn't heard in years. My room was simple, bright, and warm. A single chair sat by the window, and for a moment, I imagined Jake sitting there with his morning paper, pretending not to notice me watching him. I unpacked what little I had. Few clothes. Our wedding photo. That same old envelope, now empty. For the first few days, I kept mostly to myself. I'd sit outside with my tea and watch the sun crawl across the courtyard. Every time someone passed, they'd nod or wave, and I'd do the same. Small kindnesses, the kind that don't ask questions. Then, one afternoon, a woman with short gray hair and eyes sharp enough to cut glass sat down beside me. "You're new," she said matter-of-factly. "Is it that obvious?" I replied. "Only to those of us who once looked the same way, like the world just shoved us out the back door." Her name was Helen. A retired teacher with a sharp tongue and a soft heart. Within an hour, we were laughing like we'd known each other for years. "Running away doesn't make you weak," she told me later. "It makes you smart enough to stop standing where you're not wanted." That night, I lay awake thinking about her words. They stung not because they were harsh but because they were true. I hadn't left because I wanted to escape. I left because I finally realized no one was coming back for me. Days turned into weeks. I joined a book circle. Started painting again, badly but joyfully. And every morning I'd sit by that same window and whisper, "Jake, you'd like it here." Then one afternoon I received an email from Sam. Just a single line. "It's done. The changes are official." I read it twice. Then again. It was like exhaling after holding my breath for months. My son and daughter-in-law were no longer tied to me. Not legally, not financially, not emotionally. But that wasn't the end of it. Because a few months later, a new message arrived. One that would test every ounce of peace I'd worked so hard to build. The email came on a quiet Thursday morning. I was watering the fern by my window when my phone buzzed. A subject line in bold letters. "Important update on your estate." For a moment I froze. Even the air around me seemed to pause. I clicked it open, and there it was in plain text. Confirmation that every change was final. David and Tanya were out. Gone from the will. From everything Jake and I had worked for all our lives. I thought I'd feel guilt. Maybe sadness. But instead I felt something simpler, peace. A stillness that didn't ask for permission. I set the phone down and looked around my little room at Willow Grove. The soft light, the mug of cold tea, the half-finished book on the table. This was mine now. My life finally mine. I spent that afternoon with Helen in the courtyard. We talked about everything but family, because she understood what silence around certain topics meant. When I told her the papers were finalized, she smiled the way people do when they've seen someone choose themselves for the first time. "You did what most people never do," she said. "You closed the door and locked it without looking back." That night, I slept deeper than I had in months. Until my phone rang the next morning. The sound snapped me awake. A familiar ring I hadn't heard in so long it felt foreign. I looked at the screen. David. For a moment, I just stared at his name. The child I'd raised, the man who walked away. My thumb hovered over the green button but never pressed it. Not because of anger, because I was finally done explaining my worth to people who weighed it like currency. He called again. And again. 6 times in one day. By evening there were voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. The first was calm. The second sounded tired. By the 5th he was angry. And the 6th, he was crying. I didn't mean for it to go that way, Mom. His voice cracked. We just wanted some space after Dad passed. Tanya thought you needed a break. Please call me back. We can fix this. Fix this. Like I was a leaky faucet, not a woman who had just been thrown away. I deleted every message without listening to the end. The sound of his voice still hurt, but less than before. Maybe that's what healing really was. The hurt shrinking to a place you can finally live around. When Helen knocked that evening, I was still sitting by the window, the phone silent on the table. She looked at me, then at the phone. He called, didn't he? 6 times, I said. She whistled softly. You gonna call back? I shook my head. No, not yet. Maybe not ever. Good, she said, and poured us each a cup of coffee from her thermos. Let him sit with what he did. People learn best from the echo of their own silence. That night I listened to that echo too. And for the first time I wasn't afraid of it. But peace doesn't stay quiet for long. A week later another message came. This time not from David. It was from Tanya. And what she said was worse than any apology. Started with a ping. One single notification that cut through the quiet like glass breaking. I just finished breakfast when I saw her name light up my phone. Tanya. I almost didn't open it. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, but so is silence. Tapped anyway. Her message was long. Too long. I could tell from the preview. Paragraphs upon paragraphs of what she probably called clearing the air. Marilyn, I know things went wrong. I didn't mean for it to turn out like that. We just wanted what was best for everyone. You seemed so lost after Jake passed. And David didn't know how to handle it. I thought you'd be more comfortable staying behind for a while. We didn't mean to hurt you. My fingers tightened around the phone. Didn't mean to hurt me. That's what people say when they've already done the damage and want you to clean up after it. She went on. I heard from Sam about the will. I don't understand why you'd do something so drastic. David's been a wreck since he found out. He still loves you, you know. Maybe you should reconsider before things get more complicated. There are legal ways to contest documents like that. None of us want to go that route. There it was. The knife under the sugar. That wasn't an apology. That was a warning dressed in sympathy. For a long time I just stared at the message. Then I laughed. Not bitterly, not cruelly, just tired. Because it was the first time I could see them clearly. Every favor, every smile, every soft-spoken manipulation. It all led here. I didn't reply. Instead, I deleted the message, blocked her number, and sat back in my chair. The sunlight caught the edge of my tea mug, reflecting a thin band of gold across the table. Helen walked in not long after, holding her sketchbook. She took one look at me and said, You look like someone just offered you poison with a side of politeness. That's about right, I said. Want to talk about it? I shook my head. No. But I will say this. Sometimes people don't apologize because they're sorry. They apologize because they're afraid. Helen grinned, flipping open her sketchbook. Afraid of what? Of the version of you that finally stopped needing them. That made her laugh, but I wasn't joking. Later that night, I found myself staring out my window at the moonlight spilling across the courtyard. Willow Grove was quiet, peaceful, but my thoughts weren't. For years I had defined myself by the people I cared for. David. Even Tanya. My love had always been an open door. Now for the first time it was locked. And the key was mine. But I'd barely finished that thought when my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a message. It was an email. The subject line read, Legal Notice. Hale Family Estate. I could tell it was serious from the way my hand started shaking before I even opened the email. The subject line wasn't from a stranger this time. It was from a law office. Hale and Boyd LLP. My son's lawyers. The first line said it all. Notice of intent to contest the last will and testament of Marilyn Hale. I must have read it 10 times before it sank in. Contest. My own son. For a long moment the world went quiet. The hum of the ceiling fan. The chatter outside my window. Even my heartbeat seemed to slow, like it was waiting for me to catch up. When I finally called Sam, he wasn't surprised. "Marilyn," he said gently. "I had a feeling they might try this. But don't worry, they don't have a leg to stand on." "Why do people do this?" I asked, voice trembling. "Why do they keep taking when you've already given everything?" He paused before answering. "Because some people only know how to measure love in what they can take from it." That sentence stuck with me. He walked me through the next steps. Paperwork, responses, hearings. But I didn't hear most of it. My mind had already drifted back to that day at the airport, the moment my son turned away. I could still see his face, calm and detached, like he'd rehearsed it. It wasn't about money. It was about control. When I hung up, I went outside for air. The courtyard was alive with laughter from the other residents. Someone was playing an old Frank Sinatra song on a small radio. Helen was there, sketching in her notebook. She saw my face and didn't even ask. "They're trying to take it, aren't they?" she said. "Trying to take what I finally made mine," I replied. She nodded slowly, her pencil scratching across the paper. "Then don't let them. You've already survived worse." That night, I sat by my window again. The same window where I'd once whispered Jake's name like a prayer. I thought about the life I'd built. Small but peaceful. And I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. When I lost Jake, I thought the world ended. When I was left at that airport, I thought my heart broke beyond repair. But I was still here. Still standing. Maybe the real power wasn't in what I'd lost, but in what I refused to give back. I opened my laptop and began to type a letter. Not to David. Not to Tanya. To myself. "You don't owe anyone the version of you they abandoned." I read it once. Then I saved it and closed the lid. But peace, I've learned, never comes without one final test. A week later, a court summons arrived. And with it, a familiar voice on my doorstep. The knock came just after sunset. 3 slow, deliberate taps. The kind that belong to someone who's not unsure if they should be there. Froze. No one ever came to my door unannounced. Not here. Not at Willow Grove. When I opened it, there he was. David. My son. He looked smaller somehow, or maybe I had just grown. The boy who once towered over me now stood on my doorstep. Eyes dark with something I couldn't name. Guilt. Fear. Or maybe just the weight of being caught. "Mom," he said softly, like the word still meant something. I didn't answer right away. For months, I had replayed this moment in my head. What I'd say, how I'd hold my ground. But when it actually happened, I just stood there, staring at the man who had once called me his world. "What are you doing here?" finally asked. He exhaled, glancing down at the floor. I wanted to talk. Please." His voice was quieter than I remembered, uncertain. I stepped aside without speaking, letting him in. He looked around the small apartment, his gaze taking in the framed photo of Jake, the stack of books on my table, the knitted throw Helen had given me. "This is nice," he said, like he couldn't believe I'd made a life without him. "It's home," I replied simply. He nodded, swallowing hard. "I got your lawyer's letter. About the will. Mom, you don't have to do this. Tanya and we were just trying to figure things out. Got messy. We made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. "You left me at an airport with no way home, David. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." He closed his eyes like the words stung. I know, and I can't explain it. You thought I'd just accept it," I cut in. "Like I always did. Like I always forgave." He looked at me then, really looked. And for the first time in years, I saw a flicker of something I hadn't seen since he was a boy. Jim, I miss you, he said quietly. Tanya does too. We didn't mean for it to go this far. Then why hire lawyers? He froze. I watched the truth stumble across his face. That wasn't me. That was her. She thought, maybe if we pushed a little you'd give in, I finished for him. That's what she thought. And maybe she's right about the woman I used to be. But not this one. He said nothing. The silence between us was thick, filled with years of things we'd both refused to say. Finally I took a breath. David, I spent my whole life loving people who thought love meant control. Jake never did that. But you learned from the wrong person. He blinked fast, his jaw tightening. I don't want to lose you. You already did, I said gently. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Instead, he looked around one last time, at the photo of his father, at the small space I'd built from ashes, and he nodded once. I guess I deserved that, he whispered. When he left, I closed the door slowly, pressing my palm against the wood. My heart didn't break this time, just exhaled. I went to my window and watched the night settle over the courtyard. For the first time in years, I didn't feel haunted. But something told me the storm wasn't done yet. Because just as I turned off the lamp, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. And somehow, I knew exactly who it was. The phone buzzed again, steady and insistent. I knew who it was before I even looked. I let it ring twice. 3 times. Then, on the 4th I answered, not because I wanted to, but because some parts of closure need to be faced, not ignored. Tanya, I said flatly. There was silence. Then her voice, cool, careful, rehearsed. Marilyn. I didn't think you'd pick up. I almost didn't. She let out a soft laugh. You always did have a flair for dramatics. My grip on the phone tightened. Say what you came to say, Tanya. I heard David came by, she said casually. That must have been nice for you. He's been miserable. Can't sleep. Can't eat. You're killing him with this, you know. I didn't respond. She sighed, as if I was being unreasonable. Look, I know things got out of hand. None of us are perfect. But you're really going to leave your own family out in the cold over one misunderstanding? One misunderstanding. I repeated, my voice shaking with disbelief. You left me at an airport, Tanya. You took my bag, my ticket, my dignity. And you think that was a misunderstanding? She didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice had softened into something almost sweet, and entirely false. You're overreacting, Marilyn. You've always been so emotional. It's why we couldn't tell you everything. We didn't want you to worry. There was again that tone. The one she used when she wanted to make me doubt myself. But this time it didn't work. I took a breath and said, calm and even, I know what this is about. You're scared. Not because you lost my money, but because you lost control. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through the air. Then she laughed. Low, bitter, nervous. You think you're powerful now, huh? Sitting there in that little retirement place. Acting like you found yourself. Don't forget who helped you when Jake died. I smiled. The kind of smile that comes when pain turns into steel. I haven't forgotten. You helped yourself to everything that wasn't nailed down. You don't mean that. I do. Every word. Her tone shifted again, sharper now. You'll regret this, Marilyn. You can't erase us like that. I already did. That was it. No yelling, no grand speech. Just truth. She hung up first. And as soon as the call ended, I felt something strange. Peace. For the first time, her voice didn't echo in my head. It just faded like a bad dream dissolving in daylight. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. I turned off my phone, set it face down on the table, and made myself a cup of tea. The steam curled up like a quiet promise. You're free now. But peace never lasts long when people like Tanya are involved. The next morning, there was a knock on my door. Not gentle this time, but hard and fast. When I opened it, A man in a suit was standing there, holding a white envelope. "Mrs. Hale?" he asked. "Yes." He handed it to me. "You've been served." I stared at the white envelope in my hands for a long time. It felt heavier than paper, like it carried every ounce of betrayal I hadn't yet faced. The man in the suit had already walked away, his shoes clicking against the tile. The hallway fell silent again, but inside me something began to move. Not panic, not anger. Something steadier. Resolve. I took the envelope to my kitchen table and sat down. My tea had gone cold. I slid a finger under the seal and unfolded the papers. Petition to contest the estate of Marilyn Hale. There it was, official, printed, sealed in the language of law and loss. My own child's name signed neatly at the bottom beside Tanya's. For a moment I could barely breathe. I thought of the nights I'd stayed awake after Jake died, wondering how to survive alone. The casseroles people left on the porch, the phone calls that stopped coming after a few weeks. The silence that had nearly swallowed me. And then I thought of David, that little boy with scraped knees and a toothy grin, the one who used to bring me wildflowers from the backyard. I had loved him with everything I had. And still, he'd left me at an airport like I was luggage that didn't make the cut. I stood up. No more tears. I opened my drawer and took out a small folder. All my documents, neatly organized, notarized, protected. JR's signature gleamed faintly under the lamplight. They had their lawyers. I had my proof. By noon I was sitting across from JR again. He didn't look surprised when I slid the envelope across his desk. "I figured this might come," he said, adjusting his glasses. "But you're ready for it, aren't you?" "I'm done being the one who flinches," I said quietly. He smiled, that calm, knowing kind of smile reserved for people who've seen others come back stronger. "Good. Because they don't know who they're dealing with anymore." For the next hour we went over everything. Every clause, every timestamp, every record. By the end, JR leaned back and said, "You've done everything right. This isn't about fighting back. This is about standing still and letting truth speak for itself." When I walked out of his office, the sky was breaking open, that strange kind of sunlight that comes after a long storm. I looked up, breathed deep, and for the first time I felt untouchable. That night, I didn't think about court dates or papers. I thought about freedom. About the quiet, powerful kind that doesn't come from winning, but from finally letting go. Still, I knew there was one last chapter left in this story. Because a few days later I got a letter in the mail. Not from a lawyer, but from David himself. It began with 2 words I never expected to read again. "I'm sorry." When I saw his handwriting on the envelope, my heart stumbled. That same uneven scrawl I'd helped him learn when he was 6, when he'd written across the first birthday card he ever made me. For a moment I couldn't open it. I just sat there, holding it to my chest like it might burn through my hands if I wasn't careful. The world outside Willow Grove was quiet that morning. Sunlight crept in through my curtains, soft and golden. I could hear laughter from the courtyard, someone's radio playing an old love song. Everything around me felt alive, yet I sat frozen in that stillness, afraid of what waited inside that paper. Finally I tore it open. "Mom, I'm sorry. You don't have to believe me, but I mean it. The lawyer thing, that wasn't supposed to happen like this. Tanya said it was the only way to talk to you. I didn't want to go through with it, but I didn't know what else to do." I stopped reading and shook my head, smiling without humor. There it was again, the excuses, the soft edges around hard truths. But something about the next paragraph made me pause. "When I came to see you, I saw Dad in your eyes. I hadn't seen that in years. I realized what I'd done, how far I'd gone. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I see it now. I see you." My throat tightened. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough. But it was something. He went on. "Tanya's leaving. She said she can't live like this. Maybe she's right. Maybe we both forgot what family actually means. But I don't want to keep fighting you. If you don't want me in your life anymore, I'll understand. But please just know, I never stopped being your son." I folded the letter slowly and set it down beside my tea. Forgiveness. That word had carried too much weight for too long. People talk about it like it's a key. Something you give to let others out of their guilt. But sometimes, forgiveness is just letting yourself breathe again. That afternoon, I went to the small garden behind Willow Grove. Helen was there, watering the sunflowers. She looked up and grinned when she saw me. "You've got that look again," she teased. "Like someone just dropped a ghost in your lap." "Close," I said. "A letter. From him." He nodded. "He says he's sorry." She tilted her head. "And what do you say?" I thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. "I say, I don't need to carry that word anymore." Helen chuckled softly. "That sounds like peace talking." "Maybe it is," I said. "Or maybe it's just me finally stopping the noise." As I turned to leave, I glanced at the flowers. One of them had bent toward the sun, its petals half open but still standing tall. I touched it gently and whispered, "Keep growing." That night, I sat by my window again, the letter still unopened beside me. I didn't need to reread it. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for an apology to fix me. But peace has its own way of testing you. Quiet at first, then loud. And the next test came the very next morning, when a familiar name appeared on the evening news. It was early evening when I heard the name, David Hale, coming from the television in the common room. At first I thought I'd imagined it. My hands froze around my cup of tea as I turned toward the screen. Local contractor David Hale was taken into custody this afternoon following allegations of financial misconduct. The voice of the news anchor carried that polished tone, the kind people use when tragedy isn't theirs to feel. My breath hitched. For a second the room tilted. Helen looked over from her crossword puzzle. "Marilyn, you okay?" I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen as they showed a clip. David walking out of an office building, head low, hands cuffed. Cameras flashing. Reporters shouting questions. It didn't seem real. That wasn't the boy I'd raised. That wasn't the man who'd once whispered, "I'll take care of you, Mom, don't worry." But it was. They said he'd been under investigation for months. Fraudulent property deals, unpaid contracts, false loans. Tanya's name was mentioned too. I turned off the TV before I could hear the rest. The silence that followed felt heavy, like the pause before thunder. I walked back to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from anger. Not even from shame. But from something harder to name. That strange ache you get when you realize the final pieces of someone you love have fallen apart, and there's nothing left to hold. He wasn't evil. He was lost. And I couldn't save him. I spent the night thinking about Jake. What he would have said. He was the one who used to remind me that sometimes, the only way to teach love is by letting people face the world without your shelter. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I didn't call the lawyer. I didn't call the press. I didn't call David. Instead, I sat down at my desk and began to write. Not to defend him, not to explain him, but to free both of us from the ghosts we'd been carrying. Dear David, I saw the news today. I'm not angry. I'm not even disappointed. I just hope this is the moment you finally stop running. From the truth, from yourself, from me. You don't have to fix what's been broken. Just stop breaking what's left. I sealed the letter, but I didn't mail it. It wasn't for him. It was for me, a line drawn between who I was and who I had become. Later that day, I walked to the garden again. The same sunflower I'd touched before was now fully open, its head tilted toward the sky. Smiled. It had taken its time, but it bloomed anyway. I whispered, "That's all any of us can do." As I turned to leave, Helen called out from the porch. "You coming to dinner?" "In a minute," I said, watching the last bit of sunlight fade behind the trees. I thought that might be the end of the story. Quiet, settled, complete. But life has a way of handing you one last truth. Just when you think you've learned them all. That truth came in a letter the next week. This time from the court. Inside was a check. And a note. Property sold. Legal matter closed. Remaining funds transferred to beneficiary. Elder Haven Foundation. And under that, one line in JR's handwriting. He signed it over, Marilyn. Every cent said it was time to do one good thing. The day the letter arrived, the sky was clear. One of those rare Tennessee mornings where everything looked washed clean, like the world had pressed restart. I held the envelope for a long while before opening it. When I finally did, I didn't cry. I just smiled. David had done it. He'd signed everything over. Every cent, every acre, every last piece of what he'd once tried to fight for. Not for me. Not even for redemption. But for something greater. It wasn't money that moved me. It was what it meant. He'd finally learned that giving wasn't losing, it was releasing. That night, I walked through the Willow Grove courtyard. The lamplight made the leaves shimmer gold. Somewhere, someone was playing piano softly from the recreation hall, the same melody Jake used to hum while fixing the leaky faucet in our kitchen. I stopped to listen, and I thought about everything that had brought me here. The airport, the betrayal, the silence, the letters. Every single moment that once felt like an ending had, somehow, become a beginning. For years I thought strength meant never breaking. But I know better now. Strength is breaking and choosing to rebuild anyway, even when no one's clapping for you. Helen joined me halfway down the path, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "Thought you might want this," she said. "Chamomile, the good kind." "Thanks," I smiled, taking it. "You ever think about how life circles back when you least expect it?" He chuckled. "All the time. Usually right after I think I've figured it out." We sat on the bench by the fountain, watching the water catch the light. I told her about the letter, about David, the check, everything. When I finished, she just nodded. "Closure's funny, isn't it?" "How so?" "It doesn't show up when you demand it. It shows up when you finally stop needing it." I looked at the rippling water and felt something uncoil in my chest, like a door creaking open after years of rust. For the first time in forever, I wasn't waiting for anyone to love me right. I was already home. Later that evening I wrote one last note. Not for David. Not for Jake. For anyone who might one day sit where I sat. Forgotten, hurt, rebuilding piece by piece. If you're reading this, know that it's never too late to take your story back. People can leave you with nothing. No ticket, no apology, no plan. But they can't take away the part of you that decides what comes next. You are not a burden. You are a beginning. I folded the note and placed it in my journal. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing through the trees. Somewhere, a laugh carried across the courtyard, the kind that comes from someone who's finally learned how to breathe again. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Jake, for teaching me how to start over." And in the silence that followed, I swear I could almost hear him, that same soft off-key hum, answering back. 'Cause maybe that's what healing really is. Not erasing the pain but learning to live beautifully around it. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've lived through something similar, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.